Pegasus has a few fundamental problems that mean it was always going to be a stupid disappointment by the end, because the show is called Battlestar Galactica. They were never going to kill off the main hero ship or rename the Pegasus to honor it or something, and keeping the beast around put an unfortunate stress on the show. Either they needed to up the stakes dramatically with it around, to the point that it would have reached anime levels of silly, a million base stars on screen please, or they would have to write the ship out of the story to preserve the feeling of being the underdog and constant sense of being unsafe. Rather than write around the ship for the rest of the show, the people in charge of Battlestar Galactica decided to write the Pegasus out of the show entirely. The only problem? They had done way too good of a job convincing everybody that the beast was an insurmountable monster and could punch its way out of any problem or headbutt its way through any wall. So no matter what they did, no matter what they tried, the audience would probably be disappointed and pissed, since it would feel like a blatant ass pull to kill off such a cool ship. And that's exactly what happened. The BSG fandom has been collectively frothing at the mouth over this right up until the present day, and any mention of Liadama or his captainship of the Pegasus will bring about a deluge of rage-filled comments asking for his execution or trial for committing such a blunder. But this is the fault of the writers, since they put themselves into a corner and had no way out besides Deus Ex Machina-ing something stupid. But if you're wondering why not just keep the Pegasus in, why not alter the rest of the story to fit, I recommend you check out a video pinned in the top right there, since it explains a lot more in depth, at least in my opinion, how, why, and what the problems of the Pegasus were. This video is about making it better or trying to fix it so that it's not as much of a disappointment when it finally goes out, and it's a little bit better of a story. Or not, I don't know. This is all my opinion, so feel free to call me dumb in creative and interesting ways in the comments. Before we get into things, however, generic greetings. I'm Sai, and this is Science Insanity, a channel dedicated to bringing my love of sci-fi to anyone who the algorithm gods decide to show this to. Normally I ask at the end, but the channel's almost at 40k, and I think that would be a great milestone to talk about the final boss of science fiction. So if you end up liking the video, consider subscribing. And with that, on to the content. The biggest and most fundamental problem the Pegasus has from a narrative standpoint is that it's just too damn strong. The ship is monstrously more deadly than the Galactica while being far better protected and having the additional middle finger of being able to produce its own Vipers with the fabrication bays. It's a classic example of something that's introduced to solve problems. The fleet is running out of fighters. Bam, now we've got more. The Galactica is getting worn down and starting to suffer under the Sylon onslaught. Bam, new fresh ship ready to go. We're permanently on the back foot, and it gets kind of boring to always be running, and you don't want your show to become stale. Bam! Pincer attack and exploding base stars for days, along with great character drama that's a little bit ridiculous because Kane is a horribly unlikable character. And for a while, this is the best that the series gets. The Pegasus arrives is one of the coolest scenes in the show and one of the most beloved for good reason. But if you have a magic bullet that solves all problems, you know what that does to the tension in your story? It kills it deader than Kane. And I think the writers knew that as well, since the majority of the episodes while the Pegasus is around focus on character drama, interpersonal conflicts, and murder mysteries a la the episode Black Market. Because what, you expect combat and underdog storytelling? How? The Pegasus can face tank God and pimp slap the devil back into his place at the same time, and you expect some up-jumped toasters to stop it? No. It would be frankly silly to try and keep the same tone and pacing, since you'd need like 20 Sylon base stars at once to realistically threaten everything on the beast, or you'd need to do some Sylon shenanigans where they get onto the ship, hack it, and start disabling things. All of this culminating with the writers essentially kneecapping it in the final moments by taking away its Viper escort, only having a skeleton crew, and finally just ramming it into the dead center of a massive crossfire that was previously established to be killing the Galactica. And oh boy, what a reasonable, well-written, and executed battle. I'm sure no one would ever find this lacking and want to rewrite it. So, what to do? Well, here's my take on things. The Pegasus should not be in good condition when it arrives to the fleet. That's the easiest way that you can fix all of these problems. My biggest issue with it is how perfect the thing is. It may as well be factory new, shiny coat of paint and all. Not only is this weird, but I mean, come on, they escaped the Scorpia shipyard's mid-Cylon ambush and then fought an ongoing guerrilla war for months and what? Never got a significant scratch on the thing? Never suffered severe or debilitating damage anywhere on the ship? No. Instead, in my opinion, the best way to make the Pegasus better and ameliorate all the hatred, or at least most of the hatred that Lee and the writers get for dunking it into the trash over New Caprica, is to make the choice between the Pegasus and the Galactica less one-sided, because everybody wants the Pegasus to survive. It's objectively the better ship. It has way more capability, it's way safer guarding the fleet, the Galactica's old and beat up. Like, if you're gonna sacrifice a ship, it should have been the Galactica, and a lot of people were very rightly upset at how badly it was handled. So, starting chronologically at the Scorpia shipyards, we're gonna alter things just a little bit while keeping the majority of the story the same. We see the ship take several hits during the escape, or at least alluded to with what we see, since the actors go flying around and stumbling as the ship shakes, and it's your classic Star Trek hallmark of, oh god, we just got slapped by something really big. This time, though, I think the damage should be a little bit more severe. Maybe the Pegasus takes a nuke to the right side top flight pod. This cripples the pod and destroys a number of the guns and most of the point defense weapons along that facing. At first, while bad, this isn't anything the crew in the ship can't handle. It was designed for combat, and battle damage like this is nothing, merely slowing it down a little bit. But as they tally the damage, it becomes clear that they can't repair it all. Whether it's lacking rare resources, needing fine electronics, or some other reason that they can't use the fabrication bays for repair, the damage to the Pegasus's flak batteries and defense screen is small, but permanent. In the coming months, as Kane goes nuts in her war against the Toasters, we're presented more details and battles than before. Both because it's awesome, but also because I think something incredibly lacking in the BSG content pool is seeing Colonial tactics and combat properly. We never really get to see real Colonial warships actually fight the Sylons, just skirmishing or holding actions, or the occasional 2-on-1 fight when the Galactica and Pegasus work together, but we never really see many battles where the objective is explicitly to beat the Toasters face in and force feed them their own synthetic teeth in as much volume as is possible. And the greater purpose of all of these battles is to show the Pegasus slowly dying, and make the Cylons a little more competent. At first, the engagements go as you'd suspect. The Pegasus gets the drop on a target, engages on its terms, rips the base ship apart, and absolutely obliterates the Raider wings. But again and again, you watch the Cylons maneuver and swarm towards that left side. Every time they hammer what they have into the compromised section of the Pegasus, maybe you see the top flight deck blown open, splayed apart like a banana after a Cylon missile slips inside. Maybe you watch as Raiders slam attacks into the right side of the gunnery trench, further degrading that side's defensive flak batteries. And if you still want to go with the Sylon boarding plotline, where the traitor temporarily disables the ship, maybe instead of landing in the hangars of the compromised Pegasus, we see the Cylons aim for the armor breaches in the damaged sections along the Alligator Head. They cut holes into the exposed internals or breach closed bulkheads, both venting the crew and starting their incursions significantly closer to the CIC and valuable command staff. The reason I would want things to go like this is twofold. Firstly, the Pegasus can't be beaten in a fair fight, and I think that's a thematic role that is really fun and really cool to see. It should retain that impression people have because, fuck yeah, it's awesome! It's the beast, it's built to kick ass and chew gum, and it's all out of gum and an overstock of ass. But that doesn't work for the remaster's tone or plotline long term. So the Pegasus is slowly ground down, the Cylons throwing base star after base star at it, countless raiders and boarding attempts, all of which fail, but they just don't stop coming. Show the fate of the Galactica if they had stayed and fought instead of running. Victory after victory, but by slimmer and slimmer margins every time. Dying slowly as it's whittled down, death of a thousand cuts style. And second, I think it makes the Cylons a little bit scarier. They kind of became a meme by the end, show up, get killed, heroes escape, they sort of become a villain of the week like the original series, and it's not really a place where you want your villains to be. So this shows them as almost a numberless horde, constantly throwing more and more metal into the fire, and even if they only disable one gun, even if they only do marginal damage, then it's worth it because they can try again as many times as they like. They've got all the patience and all the numbers in the universe. Hell, if you go with this aspect, you could also justify why the Galactica was only ever really chased by 2 or 3 base stars at a time. It's not that the Cylons are incompetent. only incompetent, they just figured they didn't need any more ships to hunt down the aging Galactica, because if they pinned it down with a couple ships, they could easily destroy it, and instead dedicated all of their resources to trying to beat the Pegasus to death. I think this also keeps the integrity of those higher points alive without continuing to drag the bleak tone even further. The Pegasus can still find the fleet, and we can still get that glorious sweeping shot of the beast from its good side, hanging there in space, only instead of holding on that one shot, it slowly pans around to the other side, and you see the battle damage, the bent and ruined flight pods, the pockmarked and blasted hull, and the gaping holes where the Cylons tried to breach into the alligator head. Even without Razor and those backflash episodes that we were discussing up till now, I feel like all it would take would be a few throwaway lines and the audience would totally understand that, yeah, the Pegasus escaped from the middle of a hellish ambush. Of course it's not at 100% and sporting some battle scars after fleeing the colonies. This way, the decision isn't so one-sided between the two ships. The Pegasus is newer, better armed, more capable, and it's got the fabrication bays, but the ship is dying by the time it meets the fleet. It's only a few more rough battles or near victories away from breaking its back. Worse is that with all the damage, the ship can't protect both itself and the fleet anymore. If it were just the Pegasus, the Cylons could focus on the base star, or if it was just the Pegasus guarding the fleet and the Galactica was off doing whatever, the Cylons could focus on the Battlestar or the civilian fleet, and the Pegasus would have to choose to defend one or the other. If you want to get dark, maybe add an extra scene where the Galactica misjumps or is delayed or something, and it's just the Pegasus against a raider attack, which ends up blowing up a civilian ship because the beast has been compromised. When we get to the battle over New Caprica, we can also justify the Pegasus being there, entering the fight, and dying with a few minor changes. While the Galactica draws the base ships away, the Pegasus will jump into low orbit after Galactica does the Adama maneuver and position its weak side to the planet, warding off any errant raiders as the civilian ships break atmosphere and jump away, essentially the Pegasus acting as the guard dog for the gathering and jump point for all of the ships and people that they came to rescue. Also, since this is where the Pegasus is going to die, I'm not going to rewrite all the broad strokes of the story, I am going to rewrite the battle though, because it deserves to actually be a goddamn battle. In the show proper, they just threw the Pegasus into the middle of a giant crossfire, and while it did go down swinging, it was very disappointing, because there's so many people that came up with so many better ways that the Pegasus could have fought that battle, could have contributed, or even managed to fight its way out and survive, so we're gonna actually make it fun. Once the civilian ships are free and away, the Galactica suffers a drive failure, as we saw in the show, surrounded and bombarded by multiple enemy base stars. The captain of the Pegasus, Lee, whoever, I don't care, doesn't matter, decide that they can't lose the Galactica. The Pegasus might not be able to protect the fleet by itself if they do, as well as putting some other character drama reasons in there, like I don't want to let my dad die if it is Lee in control. But instead of charging in, it skirts the edge of the battle, using the forward-facing door knockers to obliterate one of the base stars on the Galactica's flank, before turning and presenting its strong side to the brawl. The Galactica's in the middle of the thick of it, warding off missile strikes and raider squadrons, while the Pegasus starts putting down long-range fire into the swarm, picking off Cylon capital ships one after another. And communicating with the Galactica and coordinating fire, they start turning the tide of the battle, gradually breaking the old girl out of the Cylon's encirclement and allowing her to concentrate fire again while repairing her drive. In the actual battle, most of the Cylon raiders were pulled away by a distraction, and in this version, there are far more Cylon base stars around, and that distraction also grabbed a bunch of those base ships. We're inflating the numbers of Cylons here quite a bit, because it'll be more satisfying when the Pegasus beats them to death. So, the state of the battle now. 6 base ships, 5 of which are returning with all of their raiders, and 1 surviving base ship from the original encirclement are now on the battlefield. So it's 6 base ships and their raiders versus 2 Battlestars and, let's say, half of their flight group. You can fudge the numbers, whatever. The rest of the Vipers are either climbing out of atmosphere, guarding the civilian fleet, just they're indisposed or something, they're not here. The first base ship, the last of the initial 3, tries to rush them, attempting to re-encircle the 2 ships, and gets all but cut in half by a volley from the 2 Battlestars, prompting the rest to hold their distance and fling missiles as the raiders swarm in. 5 capitals versus 2. Volley after volley of missiles are knocked out of the sky by the two Battlestars, the Galactica moving to shield the Pegasus as it maneuvers its main frontal guns into position. One after another, the Pegasus points its face at enemy Sylon ships and just obliterates them, one having its prongs ripped off and hangar bays set alight by the first salvo, the next one slicing another base star in half and sending it exploding off into all directions. Maybe the explosion collaterals a ton of its raiders just because it would be funny. But by this point, despite the incredible showing from the two ships, the raider swarm has found an opening. They start hammering both of the Battlestars. The Galactica is trying to protect itself and the Pegasus, but under concentrated missile barrage, it can't devote its entire armament to it, and the guns it can spare to help its sister ship aren't enough. Like in the show, we see the Pegasus start taking missiles to its engines and central hull. The damage starts to build, until something finally gives and a massive explosion rips out the back of the ship. The Galactica is online at this point. It can escape, but the Pegasus just had her legs cut out from under her. The FTL drive has been shattered. It's at this point that an evacuation is ordered and the Pegasus gets her suicide charge and final stand. This time though, the Galactica stays in the battle alongside, protecting the evacuation and covering the beast. Another Sylon base ship is sent down to the planet below in flaming pieces. With the evacuation finishing up and any remaining ships jumping out or Vipers landing on the Galactica's flight deck, the Pegasus is left on autopilot, programmed to rush down one of the remaining base stars. And as we see the Pegasus close distance, firing off in all directions while getting hammered, it rams into one of the last two Sylon base ships, just like it did in the actual scene we got. Except it doesn't break apart because fuck that. That scene sucked. Instead, it cleaves through the enemy base ship, alligator head mangled and warped beyond recognition as massive chunks and armor panels are ripped off the ship. But in one piece, as the two halves of the previously together Sylon ship float off. The final things we see from the Galactica's perspective is a few more errant shots and the Pegasus falling into the atmosphere of New Caprica, joined on its descent a few moments later by the last base ship, caught in the gravity well and too damaged to escape. I imagine if it were alive, the Pegasus would be heartily laughing all the way down to hell as it watched the last of the Cylon Space Forces fall with it. And scene. Okay, so let's be real. That was hokey as hell and hammier than a bacon factory, and this is going to seem like schizo ranting, but I also wrote all of that in about 5 minutes after I slammed back like a third of a tub of cherry ice cream and was listening to the greatest video game soundtrack of all time on max volume. This game has no right to have a soundtrack that goes this hard. Good God. But the way it happened in the show was a disappointing wet fart of a battle. It was incredibly nonsensical. The Pegasus deserved a real final fight, something bittersweet but badass and awesome, you know? And I feel like this idea makes more sense as well, because the Colonials are using actually sound tactics. They're trying to cover each other, they're skirting the battle, they're picking targets off one at a time, and trying to corral all the Cylons to one area that they can focus their fire on, and generally just fighting the battle a lot more competently. And the end result is, instead of having a frankly miracle scene where the exploding corpse of the Pegasus kills like 3 more ships, it's actually the good tactics and the actual combat proficiency of the Colonials that leads to this kind of outcome. And if we go with my idea of making the Pegasus damaged from the beginning, I think it would be more than possible to keep all those hopeful moments and cool scenes while also making it a sort of inevitable tragedy. I also think it would make some of the drama between Kane and Adama more believable, because against a fully armed and operational Battlestar, the Galactica just cannot stand up to a Mercury class, so it was always silly that Adama had the balls to just go, no, I'm gonna immediately face check you and vibe check everything you do. All in all, I think the biggest reason that the Pegasus storyline ended as badly as it did and was so hated was because the writers put themselves into a corner. By every possible metric, letting the Galactica die was just the correct choice. Sacrificing the Pegasus was both stupid and unimaginably short-sighted, and as such, it poisoned Adama forever for a lot of fans. After escaping Scorpia shipyards, fighting a guerrilla war, the ship should be damaged and worn down. And that's how I think the Pegasus could most easily and effectively be fixed. Of course, at the end of the day, this is my opinion, and all of this video is essentially bad fanfiction. So feel free to disagree, discuss, or write your own potential changes or critiques in the comments. I initially wanted to entirely rewrite the whole role of the Pegasus from beginning to end, but felt that that was too much for me and beyond my writing ability, so here we are. If you've made it this far though, you're clearly the target audience, so why not leave a like, subscribe, comment down below, ring the bell, all of that YouTube stuff, because it really does help out against the algorithm. If you're feeling more generous, however, Sai does have a Patreon that you can check out and throw a few dollars at my Stayin' Alive fund. Or if you just want to hang out with fellow Turbo Nerds, I stream on the weekends, most weekends, vaguely related sci-fi stuff. And we've got a Discord, a small community of fellow Turbo Nerds that you can share your love of sci-fi and hobbies with. And to all the people already supporting the channel, a huge thanks to the arms dealers, supplying all the tools and toys you saw in today's video. It was a great joy to get my hands on a Jupiter and Mercury Battlestar and then just smash them into things. To the food merchants, making sure that starvation is an ever far away foe that never needs to be worried about. A huge thanks to you guys. And to the coffee vendors, thank you very much for fueling my war on sleep. One day, I will never sleep again. And to recent joiners, a huge thanks to Westjin... you know what, I give up. I'm not even gonna try it. This guy, thank you very much for recently joining as a supporter. It's greatly appreciated. And with that, the video is functionally over. I got nothing else to say. Outros are hard. Goodbye.